think we're live. Now I think we're live. It's hard to tell. I believe we're live, though. Alrighty. Let's
The
see
best
here.
effects enhance what's under the skin.
Yeah. Pretty sure that we are currently live. I'm pretty sure. I think my microphone's good, but I'm going to turn the gain up just a bit. All right. I've been told that I am live. It's very important to be understanding whether or not one is live or not. All right. It's Sunday morning. It's every other Sunday morning, and so therefore here I am at the show, and this is cool. I'm trying to figure out, why do I say no, the Swedish Dr. Plastic. I'm not sure why you're giving me stuff in the negative, but there it is. All right, let me see. Okay, so we got 14 people watching currently. I'm just trying to get all my windows and ducks possibly in a row. Awesome. Okay. Cool. I hope everyone's having a good day, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on which portion of the country you're in. Let's see, who've we got currently in the chat? Mickey C, Drums Too Well, the Swedish Dr. Plastic, Tobias Werder, Marcus, I'm going to probably screw this up, Vengelis. Let's just get that thing. Thessaloniki. I'm not great at these names, I'm afraid, so just FYI. I will very possibly screw them up. So let's see. It's 4 p.m. in Germany. That's interesting. I mean, it makes sense, I suppose, and everything, but yeah, it's just, you don't think about that kind of stuff as much. At least I don't. That Wargamer says afternoon, so I'm going to assume it must be afternoon. I'm just going to drive by from a cat. Let's see here. So, what have we got? We've got 18 watching. Jason Marsh says hi. Mickey C says good afternoon. So, I've been finding from my analytics that I do through YouTube that about 60% of my viewership is outside of America, which is really interesting. I find that the top 5 are always United States, UK, Germany, Australia, and Canada. I think those are the top 5, but then it goes down obviously beyond that. But yeah, I've been finding that it's majority overseas, which makes sense. The majority of the world is outside of America, so that makes sense. But I would just think that the language barrier would make that number skew a little bit differently. But with the top 5, out of those top 5, 4 of them are English-speaking countries, so I guess that makes sense. So yeah, Stephen Flack says good evening from South Korea, so that's pretty cool. Kenny LB says afternoon. We've got Duralus, Greenleaf Terrain. Hello, I have met Adam from Greenleaf Terrain in person at Gen Con and possibly Adepticon, but definitely Gen Con. If you guys don't watch his channel, you should, because he makes some really good terrain and other things as well. So he's been doing a lot of work for mini wargaming, honestly. So yeah, it's good stuff. Matt Young, it is just beginning. I just turned on the feed a couple of minutes ago. Don't listen to that Wargamer. He's telling you it's over, but it's just started. All right. So, let's see. What kind of things have been going on the last week for me? Well, I did a video that went out yesterday about don't be a wargaming hoarder. And it went better than I had thought, frankly. I was having a hard time coming up with a topic for the week, and it was literally Thursday afternoon, and I still had not completely come up with something yet, and so I was like, well, geez, I don't know what I'm going to do about that. And so I had this idea in my notebook for a while. I always have this app on my phone, and I put in information like, I want to, when I come up with an idea, another drive-by from a cat. When I come up with an idea for, any kind of episode, I will put it into there so I don't forget it, because my memory stinks, frankly. And so I do that, and then I have to refer back to it when I want to do stuff from time to time. So I was like, okay, well, let's think, what can I do? And one of the most recent things I put in there was about not being a wargaming hoarder. And yeah, it was it got a lot more views than I thought. When I woke up in the morning, the next morning, it had over 1,000 views in about 5 hours, which is not standard, at least for my videos at this point. So yeah, it's currently, I think, around 7,000, and it's just barely been up 48 hours at this point, so I was kind of surprised by that. So anyway, yeah, that's it's interesting. It's very interesting, and I think that it struck a nerve with a lot of people. The whole concept of wargaming, hoarding, and people, because it's so much easier to buy things than it is to actually put them together and paint them and go through all that stuff. So, leading out of that and directly into what potentially will turn into more wargaming hoarding, we can look at my coffee. Hang on, let me get that out of the way. But Joe Flavor says he's buying Nagash today. Well, cool. Good luck. He's a really big figure from what I understand, and he's a little bit of a difficult build. I have purchased the Glotkin and have not put him together yet, and he's also kind of a difficult build, and I think he's going to be a difficult paint too, but I'm looking forward to it. But, like I was talking about hoarding, look at my hoard of skeletons. Kenny LB is buying Nagash on Wednesday. Wow, there's a lot of Nagash going on there. Long live the Death Alliance, is what I'm saying. And as I say that, here comes some skeletons. So, one of the things that I've been talking about lately is how I'm building a secondary army, and it is basically Death Grand Alliance based for Age of Sigmar, for those of you who aren't necessarily following Age of Sigmar. That's kind of a bigger thing that I've been doing more stuff. I mean, I'm doing other stuff as well, but I've started doing more of this stuff as well lately. And the reason that I want to build two armies is, there's a little bit of gamer ADD, which everybody kind of has. I get that. But I'm also looking at the aspect of, I want to have two little armies, at least to start, so that I can play with other people who don't have an army, whether it's teaching my wife how to play a little bit, or maybe other people who are like, well, I'm wondering about Age of Sigmar, and then I'd be like, oh, well, you play these guys, I'll play these guys, and then we'll do it. So it's kind of having two small ones. I think it'll be kind of interesting. So I'm going to go through these guys in a little bit, but let's see here. That Wargamer says he's having fun assembling a resin Tech Marine. Yeah, I've built one of those before too. They are the Finecast Tech Marine is a pain in the rear because of all those weird little arms, and they're all kind of weird and bendy. So yeah. Let me see here. Hey, Adam Smasher, did you have a look at Silver Tower already? Asks Lysandra. It looks interesting, but it's kind of steep. I've looked a little bit at it online, I think the models are really interesting for Silver Tower, and I know it's been the big thing lately. A lot of people have been talking about it. But, yeah, I don't know that I'm going to pull the trigger on it, because it's a little bit more of a board game than I would like, and I'm not super into board games lately, so, yeah. But it does have some really cool-looking figures. There's a couple of them I think are really interesting. Captain Orex says, hey there, Adam, your video about wargaming hoarding pushed me to sell my Imperial Guard that we're gathering dust. Well, good for you. I've talked to a couple other people who've sold stuff recently, either not necessarily because of my video, but just they mentioned, oh, I did something like that recently. A guy I know named Dave did that, and he took that money and turned it around and bought himself an airbrush so he could more quickly paint the other guys that he still had left behind, which I think is a really good idea. You know, airbrush can be kind of an expense, and so to sell like some guys you're not going to use, turn it into an airbrush, which will allow you to more quickly paint the guys that you are going to use, I think makes pretty good sense. So, let's see here. Good evening from Australia. Good evening. Let's see here. Peter Pan asks, or says, not sure if I'm buying the Blight King. No, yeah, not sure if I'm buying the Blight Kings. Playing 40k orcs, but Blight Kings look awesome. The Blight Kings are amazing looking. I bought some of them actually before I started playing Age of Sigmar, just because I'm like, well, I have to put these guys together and paint them because they're so cool looking. Deck and Dice Gaming says, I'm trying to decide between Flesh Eaters or a Skeleton Horde. What is your guys' opinions? I find with Age of Sigmar, myself, personally, I just like to buy the models that I think look cool. Because there's not really any points, it's difficult to say, oh, well, these guys are, you know, overcosted or these guys are undercosted or anything like that. Not until this summer, obviously, when points come out. But again, you don't have to play with the points if you don't want to. So for me, I wanted to go with skeletons because I've always thought skeletons were cool. But that's just me. If you like the look of the Flesh Eaters, you should go with those guys. The models for Silver Tower look awesome. Yeah, no, they do. They definitely do. Had to go on eBay and buy a couple of the heroes. Yeah, I may look at that. I think there's going to be some people who will be selling them and making some money off of them, obviously. But I also wonder if Games Workshop's not going to actually just sell them separately down the road. Maybe, you know, half a year from now. But let's see here. That hoarding video made me go right out and buy a display case. It feels so great to have somewhere for all my work to go. Thomas Blythe. Well, that's a good idea. Yeah, having a nice display case, especially one of those. That one from IKEA is really nice because it's cheap and it is a neat place to put stuff. Helen McClure bought Silver Tower and pre-ordered the Good Value expansion pack yesterday. Oh yeah, I heard about that expansion pack. That does look like good value because it's a bunch of heroes that are each about $30 a piece generally, and you get them like a whole bunch of them for like less than 60, which is like I think 4 of them. So that's really cool. Let's see here. I bought the Grand Alliance Death box set because of your last video. After being Games Workshop free for almost 6 years, I've been sucked back in. Yeah, that's how it works. That's kind of unfortunately the way it works. Let's see here. Lone Lycos. Hey, Adam, I was wondering what you thought about Fire Slayers. Excuse me. Let's see here. Fire Slayers. Well, they're small. They have lots of hair and generally not too much in the way of clothing. And they usually carry all before. I'm starting to pick up. Let's see here. Pick up pretty well where I am. It's starting to pick up pretty well where you are. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know anybody who's playing Planetfall. I know some people who are playing the spaceship one, which is Firestorm Armada, but I don't know anybody who's playing Planetfall. Let's see here. Just started my Skaven army, says Oscar. I'm new to the hobby. I have 20 Plague Monks and 16 Giant Rats. What shall I get next? Well, if you like the Plague... if you like the Plague Monks, something you could get next... Hang on, let me move this. Let me put this over here. You could get one of these. This is the Plague Claw Catapult, which I'm planning on priming this guy today. So I was going to be showing this off a little bit. So the Plague Claw Catapult, you can build it also as a lightning something or other. But if you're going with Plague Monks, this has also got the Nurgle keyword, so you would probably want to go with this over that. You can build it a bunch of different ways. I've built the tall way, but you can also build it the short way, although I think it looks better this way, frankly. You'll notice that I have already based and done the texturing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm a big fan of, like I've said in the videos, putting on the basing material and stuff before you prime it, because then you can just kind of go from there. So you can see here, I don't know, it's kind of bright, but there's like a skull there that's made out of resin. I've got some little wood coffee stirs that I've made it look like they were planks, maybe like in trench warfare, and this thing's already rolled over them. You can see here I've got a skeleton, and he's on the like dead, just the torso and the head and all that stuff. But yeah, there's lots of, over here there's a sword stuck in the ground right there. So yeah, I'm going to be priming this guy up with Krylon today, the dark brown Krylon camo paint. this afternoon. I'm going to spritz him real good and get him brown because it's mostly going to be brown because it's wood. So that's kind of a good base color. And then from there I'll work after that. So let's see here. Good morning, anything like that. You're obviously going to be playing points. Now, whether you're playing something like South Coast GT points or whether you're playing like the point system that's going to come from GW, that's going to be a good question because it'll be interesting to see what tournament players prefer. But that all being said, if you're playing with friends and stuff in your basement or at your local game store, you'll play with whatever you want to play. And I have a suspicion that I will probably dip my toe into the points and give it a try, but there'll also be plenty of times when we'll just sit down and play normal games without points. Do the new cases you have there fit the new Stormcast flyers? Need something to store them in? Are you talking about the foam here, B. Foster? This piece of foam is GW foam, and I don't even know how I ended up with it. I think I bought some stuff used from a friend of mine, and that stuff came with it, or I'm not even sure how I got that foam. But I don't particularly like it long term, and I don't know if it would work with the flyers, definitely. I decided to paint my dwarf army to look like terracotta army, but made from iron and bronze and stone. Well, that's a cool concept. I like that. I mean, I don't know if it would work with the naked guys as much, the fire slayers, but like the other kind of guys, I think would definitely look cool that way. Have you tried any sort of polymer clays like Fimo or Super Sculpey to create bits and or terrains? Asks Peter Varro. I have been wanting to use something called Milliput. Not necessarily Fimo or Super Sculpey, although I see that more frequently at local stores. But I have wanted to use Milliput for some things, and I just haven't gotten quite around to it. I have some stuff called Instamold, which is this kind of clear plastic. You boil some water in the microwave, like in a mug, you get it really hot, and then you dip the stuff into it to kind of like melt it, and then you squish it, and then you make a mold with it, like just press something into it, and then drop it in cold water, and it hardens super fast. And then it makes a great press mold, and you can press things into it, like if you were trying to, copy something that you were using in your terrain or something or whatever. Yeah, I mean that stuff's cool, and I think that Milliput would work well in that, but otherwise use just regular green stuff. Dave Redman asks, "Hey Adam, do you have any tips for getting into Malifaux?" I would say pick a crew that you like. Those crew boxes are great deals. They're usually $40 to $50, and they're a great starting force. Get the instruction booklet, and get one of the deck of cards. It's really all you need. It's an interesting game. I've got some friends that are actually getting into it now, so that's kind of cool too. Let's see here. What is your opinion on casting? I'm converting 40 plus skeletons into archers, and in going to cast the bows because I can't think of a better way. Opinion. Don't want to be called a dirty caster. Well, I was just kind of talking about press molding. I mean, completely casting all new figures, I don't know about that. If you want to come up with if you can find a way to come up with like good like bows and you're going to put them on regular skeletons, in my mind that's converting. If you were going to completely build all new figures casted from scratch, that's a different story, like if you're copying. Now if you sculpted your own skeletons and then cast a whole bunch of those, knock yourself out. But yeah. Twisted Bishop is asking if I will be doing an Age of Sigmar bat rep sometime soon. I am hoping so. I need to clean up some space in the basement and do some of that stuff, and then I need to figure out how to properly mic it, how to get good sound, and that's the hardest part right now. That and figuring out camera angles a little bit, so we'll see how that goes. I have a plan for a Dark Sylvaneth Wood Elf army. What is your opinion about that? A friend of mine's starting a Wood Elf army, and he likes it because it's got a lot of range attacks. Let's see here. It's taken me 27 years to finally have a finished 40k orc army. Hoarding is a scourge. Well, yes, it definitely can. And with an orc army, that's a horde army to begin with, so it's kind of just built in. You're going to have hordes of a horde, or whatever. Let's see here. What do you think of the 3 systems for AOS lore, points, and Unbound, and how they'll work? I haven't listened to the podcasts yet, actually, about how this stuff's going to work, because from what I understand, they weren't super specific, so I'm kind of just like, I want to wait till there's more specific information out, which very possibly may be in the upcoming month. Some of the rumors are that that book that's going to have all the points and stuff is going to drop on possibly as early as the 11th of June, from what I understand. So that's kind of a cool thing. So I'm okay waiting until that kind of happens, maybe. Let's see. Have you tried the Ninth Age? No, and I never played 8th edition either, so I was never really into regular fantasy. The whole rank and flank moving, blocks of guys. Yeah, I'm not necessarily into that. So that's why I've never tried Ninth. Yeah, they've been teasing summer for the Wood Elves. Yeah, I've heard summer or fall for the Wood Elves to drop. Oscar Cullinan says, I love your channel. Thank you very much. Lilith is a good start in Malifaux, says Piscina. Yeah, I mean, you can go that direction. I went with the Victorias for Outcast. They were kind of cool. And I've also got the Von Schill crew, so I've got 2 Outcast crews. I play AOS with my girlfriend. See, now it just scrolled past. Rats. So there's a bunch of... Okay. Let's see here. Check out Bella Lost Souls under the AOS tab. For the Wood Elves, yep, there's more information there. Will any more Wreck Age be featured in the channel? Wanting to get my mates down here in Australia into it. Yeah, I think so, because like I said, I'm friends with the guys that run it. They're based out of Chicago, so they live near-ish me. They're good guys, and I like, post-apocalyptic stuff. So yeah, I've got 4 guys built, and I have their bases textured downstairs. They might be getting primed to this afternoon as well, either before or after I mow the lawn, which I'm not looking forward to. Let's see here. Well, that stuff's starting to go by now. Let's see here. I can't wait for Total Warhammer on Tuesday. Just finished the preload for it. Yeah, I've heard good things about that. I never played any other Total War games, but I could maybe look at this one. I'm going to definitely watch YouTube videos about it, that's for sure. Just finished my first home game of Silver Tower. Best time I had since I started the hobby. Did you have a go at it yet? No, I haven't. I'm going to probably watch some videos on that too, because like I said, I'm interested. I'm interested in seeing how that's going to work. But let's see. There's no such thing as speed painting. It's a myth. I took a class about speed painting a couple years ago at Adepticon, and the guy in the class is like, well, one way you can speed paint is if you just move your brush faster. So that wasn't super helpful. But that being said, there are ways that you can speed things up. For me, I do have a tendency to kind of noodle and work on stuff and kind of slowly, but there are definitely steps where you can be like, well, if I do this, then it'll just make it go quicker. So when I do all these skeletons, I'll move you out of the way. When I do all these skeletons, I'm going to be using the techniques that I did in that video about how to paint a horde of skeletons. I'll be using them on these guys because that's, in my opinion, the way to do it. So let's see here. Von Schill is good too. Yeah, I like Von Schill. He's just kind of a cool looking figure, and the newer sculpts too, specifically once they moved into plastic, were really super cool. What do I think of GW new policies? Al Sir asked the question. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, but I'm wondering if it's about like just the way that they're acting differently now as a company, which that I think is really good. Like they're talking more to people. They've started up their Facebook page again. They're asking people's advice on like the frequently asked questions and stuff like that. I think that kind of stuff is a breath of fresh air. They're going to conventions. They're going to tournaments. They went to the South Coast GT and they live blogged from the South Coast GT. I was astounded. So yeah, I think if that's the direction they're heading, I think it's a very good idea. Let's see here. I think Miranda said she's going to do some Total Warhammer videos. Yeah, I could probably see that. She's been doing some of the War Machine Tactics video game videos, so that's really cool. Let's see here. I'm looking for an army in Warhammer that has cheap units and which has a lot of figures in a pack. Any ideas? Excuse me. Just had to cough, so I turned off the microphone for a second. Honestly, you could go, with undead. Skeletons are pretty cheap. Zombies are pretty cheap. You get a bunch of those in there. Plus, in either of those, if you want to, you could always use Mantic figures. I think the Mantic figures, they're undead, are great looking. So I know a guy at our local store who's mixing Mantic's zombies with GW zombies, and they look great, especially when they're all mixed together. You can't really tell. So that's really cool. Al says by how much they've changed in the last 18 months. Yeah, no, there's definitely been a change to their organization, and I think it's really good. Let's see. Let me see here. I was going to buy some Chaos models, but I spent loads of money on Dark Souls, the board game, and a Total War, as they both looked great. They're too good not to get. I don't know a ton about Dark Souls. I've never played the video games. I know they had a board game came out, and a lot of people have been happy about it. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I've never played any of the video games, so I don't have anything to really compare it to. Easiest way I've found to speed paint, according to Onler. Easiest way I've found to speed paint is to just pick the color progression from a paint range, so Khorne red and Wazdaka red, Evil Sun's red, and then just use them without any blending between the layers. Yeah, that can help. I've also found that shading with an airbrush really speeds up my painting too. It makes it look a lot better, and I can kind of do stuff, that helps a lot, frankly. Let's see here. It bothers me how GW has made up names like elves because they can't copyright the real name. Yeah, I don't know. They're still sort of stuck on that whole copyright thing, and I understand it to some point. You get to a point when you're a big company and you have to protect your IP, and especially when they sell their IP, excuse me, or rent their IP so much to to video game companies and things like that. They have to be able to kind of stick with some of that stuff. So, but yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they stick up with that. I mean, they changed all their paint line, so that they could copyright all the names. I don't know. Black is kind of black, but you've got other shades. And I mean, Army Painter was kind of starting to try to get in there and go, oh, this is a spray can full of this number or this paint name, and they were trying to get as close as they could to match. You can't copyright ultramarine blue because it's not. Like, ultramarine blue was a color long before the ultramarines were ever thought up. So, yeah, I understand kind of to some degree what they're doing. It doesn't bother me that much, but let's see here. I've gotten really into Wrath of Kings. They are releasing the new book and the second wave of figures this summer. Are you still playing, or have I lost interest? I don't have any friends that play it. I'm still working on and off on my Fishman, and I'm hoping that I can eventually find some people that'll play it. I might take it with me to Adepticon next year and try to get into a narrative campaign. I think that would be really cool. Because, yeah, I think it is a great game, and I'm really looking forward to the new book because it's supposed to streamline and kind of fix some of the rules issues from the first edition. So, let's see here. I'm enjoying the Facebook page as well. I'm loving it. I appreciate that. The Paint Showcase Club launched, last week. It's been crazy. There's nearly 800 people that have joined the club, and I'm really happy about that. And I hope that you guys have been taking a look at that. As a matter of fact, I set this up ahead of time. Boom! Check this out. So, yeah, there's some amazing stuff going on so far in this paint club. I have seen some amazing painting. There's been a lot of really cool, back and forth people talking about, how to, people asking questions, other people answering. I don't know if you guys saw this. This kind of blew my socks off. This is a guy named Bill Bloop, and he has been painting this crazy-looking undead stuff with this kind of Terrorgeist sort of zombie dragon dude with a vampire count. It's just crazy. Really, really super good. So, yeah, this stuff... I'm really looking forward to making a video and doing some stuff, pulling some of the best stuff kind of out of here and going through all of that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really glad that people are getting some just I've seen tons of great conversations, people asking questions, people giving answers, going back and forth. So if you want to sign up for it, it's the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club, and there's links all over the place on where you can get there and stuff like that. But yeah, it's pretty cool, and I've been pretty glad to see that it's been kind of picked up and people have been happy with it. So that's been a lot of cool. Let's see here. How do you like the new box sets for Silver Tower Hero Expansion, where box with 4 heroes is about 30 pounds? Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that if you buy any of those guys separately, they'd probably be those, those normal clamshell single sprue guys, and probably be about $30, I think. Maybe 32 or whatever the price is. But yeah, if you buy a whole bunch of them together, it's like the start collecting boxes, Like the Lizardman start collecting box is $85, and it comes with a Carnosaur, which is $85 by itself. So, I appreciate that they're putting these kind of group. People used to always complain about Games Workshop, about how they would have these bundle deals that were no savings. So now they start making bundle deals that do have savings, and then people are like, well, but why is there so many savings? You should. Why does that just mean that the normal ones are so expensive? Well, you know, some people are never happy. That's just kind of the way it works. Let's see here. Does anyone know if GW sells an Archaon model that isn't riding that huge three-headed thing? I don't know if they do anymore. I think that figure might be out of print, because I was thinking about that too, because there's a War Scroll for Archaon not on the big three-headed dude, but I couldn't find a model. I guess I could make one or something like that, but... Sam just painted, Sam Lenz, friend of the show and fellow presenter here, he just painted an Archaon for a friend of mine, commission deal, and it's astounding. If you go and look at Sam's website, which is samsonminis, all one word, .blogspot.com, he's got pictures of it up, and it is ridiculous. It's on Cool Mini or Not right now as well. He's also on Cool Mini or Not under, I think, Samson or Samson Minis. So, yeah. Have you tried either Frostgrave or Blood Eagle, and if so, what is your opinion of them? Frank Frey asks. I have definitely played Frostgrave, and I like it quite a bit, and I'm going to be doing bat reps for it as well. I've got two warbands built, and then when I was at Adepticon, I bought some of the new plastic soldiers that they came out with, because they're great looking and they're super reasonable. I mean, you get like 20 guys for $30, which is nuts. And so yeah, I'm gonna definitely. I like the concept a lot of Frostgrave, and I'm looking forward to playing it. So yeah, playing it more. And yeah, I have not heard of Blood Eagle. I don't know what that is. Let's see here. I just got into Warhammer 40k, and there's nobody that I know who plays the game other than the GW store that takes 11 hours to drive to. Do you have any advice for motivation? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess it's one of those situations where you just kind of have to. I mean, there's probably other people that around you. I keep thinking about doing a video about how to find people around you that play these games. So I've been thinking about, like I find people sometimes through Facebook. We have different, like you find a group of people like in your rough area. Like if in America, we've got states. So there's like a Wisconsin 40K page on Facebook where you end up finding other people who live around you, and maybe you find some people through there. If the closest store of any kind is 11 hours away to drive through, that seems like it's very far, and that doesn't seem like it's going to be a good idea. But oh wait, sorry, it's not 11 hours; it's 1.5 hours. All right, I read. Okay, gotcha. Okay, 1.5 hours is much more reasonable than 11 hours, but still, it's kind of tough just to get together and play a game, unless you maybe schedule something with some people and then online. But yeah, it's difficult when there's not much close by. Like I'm kind of spoiled in that we've got a local store that's owned by a friend of mine that is seriously 5 minutes away by car, and so that helps a lot. But sometimes showing friends how to play, and that will also do the trick. That's true. That's one of the reasons why, again, I'm building a small secondary force for Age of Sigmar, so that I can kind of do that as well. Let's see here. Twisted Bishop says, bring out your dead, show us the models. I will probably do that as well. So yeah, these skeletons are... So here's the story behind these skeletons. What happened is that I was interested, I bought the Start Collecting super great deal box, but it comes with 10 skeletons, which is funny because they call the box Skeleton Horde, but there's 10 skeletons, which is not much of a horde. And I was thinking, okay, well, over time, I'll maybe scour eBay and do stuff like that and whatever to find more skeletons. And then my friend, who I just mentioned, who owns the game store, is like, hey, I was looking in my storage, because he buys armies. He buys magic cards, and he also buys armies. And then usually he flips the armies on eBay, but sometimes he sits on them for a while. So he's like, hey, I was looking through my storage stuff, and I found this. Come on down and take a look at it. And he had this big, huge lot of skeletons. So I bought some of them. Now, admittedly, they are technically Tomb King skeletons. So you can see here. I'll try to get him up a little bit closer. So he's a Tomb King skeleton, and you can tell by the shield. But honestly, I think if I paint the shields and just don't use any brass or gold colors, if I just use all dirty silver and things like that, he doesn't look very Egyptian Tomb King-y otherwise. Like if you look at it's not in great focus. If you look at the rest of him, he just looks like a relatively normal skeleton. It's just this shield, which is maybe a little Egyptian-y, but not terrible. But like I said, I think if I just paint it in mace, like, maybe black, and then the trim and the dots and stuff like that are all going to be, silver or iron or something like that, I think they'll work out great. Secondly, with the... Now, this one's a little bit more because of the spiky bits on top. This guy looks a little bit more, maybe, kind of Egyptian-y. But even his helmet, if I paint that helmet to be silver... you can't see the helmet very well. If I paint that helmet to be silver, metallic, iron, maybe even a bit corroded because he's a skeleton, he's been underground, he should be fine. But these were already built. That's the thing that was awesome. These guys were built, they were just on squares. So I've been going and cutting their little feet off of the square bases and putting them on round bases, and I've been putting texturing on. This is basically all just, what do you call it? It's baking soda on CA glue. That's what I've been using. And a little bit of kitty litter kind of sprinkled in there for a little bit extra. And then once you paint over all of that, when you do the priming, it looks really pretty good. You'll notice this guy's already got an arrow stuck into his shield, which is pretty cool. And he's a hornblower guy, so that's fun. Now, one thing that I did, because... Okay, so this one is still on the square base. You can see that. I'm going to scooch these guys over. This guy's still on the square base, and he has the definite, very, very kind of Egyptian-looking banner that he carries, right? This is your Egyptian banner guy. And I didn't want to, I was like, well, I'm going to have to cut that banner off, and I'm going to have to do something else. Well, actually, I just went at that banner with a pair of clippers. So now if you look here, okay, there we go. That's the same banner, right? This is another guy who I've put on the round, and I've just put him on the same banner. I just clipped everything else away. I got rid of all that round stuff, and I just clipped it, and now it looks a lot more Vampire Counts kind of skeleton-y and a lot less Tomb King skeleton-y. Skeleton-y is a word, pretty sure of it. Anyway, so yeah, that was actually really simple. I mean, it took a little while. I had to do a lot of shaving with, after I did all the clipping with my straight clippers, I had to do a lot of shaving with the X-Acto, and then I went at it with a file a little bit, and then some emery board and stuff like that. But, it's a pretty simple, quick kind of thing to do, and it makes him look a lot better that way. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of these guys. Right now, we're looking at this. See, that's what I don't like. This. Someone just asked about what's the best way to transport stuff. Personally, I like battle foam, and one of the reasons I like battle foam is because their foam, these parts in the middle are loose. Okay, you can't really see what I'm doing here, but this part's loose. It's not attached to the bottom, so guys will get stuck underneath. They'll go, I can stick my finger under here, and then you'll see it pop up over the... It's not... I don't like the GW foam that well. Not the new stuff, specifically. The stuff from battle foam is all glued down, so, that's nice. I like that. There's also KR Multicase is a good one, from what I understand. I've not really used much of their foam. I know it's softer. That's the one downside, I think, to battle foam, is that the battle foam itself can be a little bit more rigid, which is good sometimes for protecting, but sometimes if your holes that you've been putting your guys in are too tight, over time you will rub some paint off if you didn't properly seal them. So yeah. So another thing that I've been doing, even though these were all built to be Tomb Kings, I've been popping some of their shields off and then gluing extra Vampire Counts round shields on, just to kind of mix them up. So I've got this one's got one, and I know there's a couple other guys in here that have got one. One of them that was in the original picture that I put up, the thumbnail here, so this guy here, he's got one of the Vampire Counts. His shield looks like it's like the lid of a coffin that's been busted open and stuff, which is really cool. I mean, one of the reasons why I love the Vampire Counts skeletons. I do have some of the Vampire Count skeletons. Here's one. He's got an arrow stuck in his shield. And this is going to be my other group that's going to have sword and shield. These guys are all spear and shield. The upside to having spear and shield is that it has a 2-inch reach. So if you put a whole horde of guys up against something, the guys in the back can still attack, whereas these guys with the sword and shield can't. But that's just kind of the way it works. They also get a slightly better attack and that kind of stuff, or it's a better wound, I forget which. So, People are asking, how did I separate them from the square bases? Interesting story. Because they're skeleton and they have relatively tiny little feet, you can just take an X-Acto and you can just slide it between the foot and the base and just basically press, and just eventually you'll just slice through and kind of separate it. Some of them I could even just wiggle it back and forth. I don't know if the guy who glued these originally did a very good job. So sometimes you can just wiggle it and they'll pop off. The person who did this, who built these originally and then sold them to my friend and then I bought them, he also didn't really take too much time to shave off a lot of the mold lines, which I think is savagery, frankly. But so I've been doing a lot of that as well. But yeah, you just basically just take an X-Acto and shave under. And the thing that I've been finding is if I press it against a table so I don't, shave it and stick the point of the X-Acto into my finger, that's better, as it turns out. So yeah, I've been sliding it underneath the feet and then just like that. There are chemicals you can get. There's something called a CA debonder, cyanoacrylate glue, which is basically super glue. There's a debonding agent you can get, which is frankly, I think it's probably just acetone. I don't know. It smells like fingernail polish remover. I don't know if this guy used plastic glue or if he used CA, so that's why I didn't want to bother using it. And I've just been kind of shaving them off with an X-Acto, and it seems to work pretty well. So, where did I get the round bases without slots? Where did I get the round bases? From a bits guy, a friend of mine, again, the store owner guy. He has a lot of armies and things that he buys and stuff, and so yeah, I bought them from him. You'll notice on this one here, you'll see this stuff here. Like, this guy does have a slot, and what I do to cover up the slots, honestly, and this is going to sound weird, but it works. I take a piece of, like, the foil packaging that, like, granola bars come in. Like, if you're eating a granola bar or whatever, you just save the packaging, and then you just cut a little slice of that packaging, put it over the slot with some CA glue, let it glue down, and then when I go back and I cover the entire base in CA glue and then sprinkle the baking soda on top, like I guess if I took a knife and I poked into the base, it would poke through, but otherwise you'll never know. You'll never know that I used. If you use like a thick piece of card or plastic, well, then you get this bump where the slot in the base is. You know what I mean? And then that looks weird. Now, if you put like this piece of like chipboard or even like paper's not terrible, but like the foil that like granola bars and like candy bars and stuff come in is so thin, and it's kind of plasticky based, obviously. You can just throw that stuff down, cut like a little piece, a little strip of it, glue it on there with CA glue, super glue, and then let it dry, and then glue your guy on there, and then I throw CA glue on there, I squish it around with a toothpick to spread it around, and then I sprinkle baking soda on top, and that makes a very, very, very fine, textured surface. I just go from there, and it works out really well. So that's what I do when I do have a slotted base that I want to cover up the slot. Let's see here. Will I be doing any green stuffing? Maybe some cowls or robes? I might. One of the guys in this group has got like a tabard or like a loincloth, and so I might make him the boss, like the aspiring champion or the sergeant, whatever you'd call it in that group. I forget what they're called in the skeletons. And I might need to make another guy like that, or give him some other special thing just so that he looks a little bit fancier than the rest of the guys. So I might do some green stuff, but I'm not really good at it, frankly. So let's see here. Do you have a Vargulf for your vampire count force? I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking about, what else I'm going to add to it, but I haven't gone too far into that right now. Played my first few games of Age of Sigmar the other week. After buying it from pre-order, it was real fun. I don't want to convert my old Warhammer Fantasy Battles armies into it, so I can still play field games. Yep, absolutely. Let's see here. If it's super glue, you can also put it in the freezer to pop them apart. My concern was, because someone else told me about that, if you put something with super glue, you put them into the freezer, you can pop them apart. My concern is that not only will it make where the model is attached to the base brittle, my concern is it will also make all the rest of the joins brittle. Because originally I was like, well, heck, I'll just throw a whole box of skeletons in the freezer, let them sit for a couple of days, and pop them off their bases. But I think then their heads and their arms and everything else are going to pop off too, which I don't want. So that's why I didn't give it a try. But I might do some experiments, for science, and put a couple of skeletons in the freezer and see how that works out. Maybe just the bases will come off, but I have a suspicion everything else will pop apart too. See, Twisted Bishop is backing me up over here. The trouble with the freezer trick is that if the model limbs were also assembled with superglue. Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, that would be my concern about throwing your figures that you want to take off the bases into the freezer, is that you'll basically they'll come apart altogether, not just off the bases. Oscar says, I'm using square bases on my Plague Monks. They have ranged attack, so the second line can also attack, and circular on my Giant Rats. That's cool. I generally have always preferred the look of round bases, no matter what, which is another reason why I didn't play Fantasy. I don't know, it's a stupid thing, but I've just never liked the look of square bases. It's just personal. So I've always liked the round bases, and so that's why I've been anything that I've been getting, and I haven't bought a lot of used stuff necessarily here and there, but I've been popping them off the squares. You know how some of the other models, like the Tomb Banshee, which is one of those single sprue little clamshell plastic figures, like she comes on a square base that's like integrated. I have been clipping the edges off the square base, putting it onto a round base, green stuffing around the edges, and trying to blend it together. And it works out okay, but I don't necessarily have to. Let's see here. CA debonder is a dad's best friend. Debonds kids who've gotten into the CA from themselves. Yeah, no, I can understand that. I've used it on myself, actually, before. Granola bar foil to the rescue. Yeah. That stuff works great for this, in my opinion. I was literally in the basement going, I need something really thin to glue onto this base to cover this hole, and I had just eaten a granola bar, and I was like, well, there you go. So it works out pretty well. Wouldn't baking soda be dangerous with all the water involved in painting? I've never had a problem. I do the majority of my basing in baking soda. And it's with CA. I've had people before tell me, they're like, oh, but CA glue will react with the baking soda because it's a catalyst, which is true. That's the thing, is if you're trying to get CA glue to dry more quickly, if you sprinkle baking soda on it, it hardens up really quick. And they're like, but it gets hot too. I've never had it get hot. It may get warm. I've never felt it get warm. I understand that science says that it may get warm. It's never melted anything. I've never burned a finger. I've never even felt it get warm. So I believe that if I had used one of those laser temperature gauge things where I might see the temperature go up a little bit when I use it. But for me, I like to use baking soda because A, it hardens up the CA right away. Secondly, it just is a very small, very fine texture. Sprinkling sand onto CA or to PVA, sand looks really big next to how tiny these little dudes are. You know what I mean? It looks like they're standing in a field of gravel, which if that's what you're looking for, that's cool. But I'm trying to make them look like they're standing on mud or dirt or whatever, and the CA glue is really cool. You can kind of maybe see here too that if you put the CA glue on thick and then you sprinkle a whole bunch, just drop a whole bunch of baking soda on there, sometimes you get these interesting ripples too, which just sort of randomly happen, and they look really neat. So when you dry brush that and everything after you've finished painting the rest of the model, it just kind of looks nice. I should do some close-ups about that and talk maybe more about it. I've talked about it originally in a video about basing techniques. I talked about CA glue. I may need to do one just about CA glue and baking soda because I think it's a great technique and I really like the way the stuff looks. Let's see here. Personally, I think that the Vargolf is a bit of an old model that needs an update. Yeah, one of the reasons I've been staying away from some of the Flesh Eater stuff is because I just am not a super big fan of the way it looks. Being more of a modeler and less of a gamer, I do like to play the games, but I don't go, oh, well, these guys are super tough, so I want to definitely have these. If I don't like the look of a model, I don't put it in my army generally. So, yeah. Let's see here. The nice thing would be building your models with all plastic glue, then just super gluing them to the base. Then you could pop them off in the freezer if you ever need to rebase. That is an astounding amount of pre-thought. It would be nice, but especially when you're buying models generally used from somebody else, whether it's on eBay or from a local store, you have no idea how they were put together. And like I said, I always have to go back and shave off all of the mold lines because most of the people that seem to buy these things and then sell them right away to somebody else generally didn't take that kind of time. So let's see here. Baking soda turns into sludge in water. It probably does, but once it's been mixed in and catalyzed with CA glue, I don't ever have any problem. It's already inside the glue. And like I said, I've been doing it for a long time. I've never had any problems, especially because I'm going to prime over it next. and then it'll be coated now in CA glue and a layer of spray primer, whether it's airbrush or whether it's rattle can outside. And so yeah, I've never had a problem with CA glue or with baking soda. It works great. So let's see here. I use Scotch tape to cover slots or holes in my bases. No glue retired. Cut to size and stick it to the base. That's also a very good idea. I did not have any Scotch tape in the basement when I was doing that, but that would also probably work. I would still want to put a little bit of glue underneath the Scotch tape, so it's because if the Scotch, yeah, I don't know. I'm always one of those guys who thinks, you know, more reinforcement is always better. So I would probably put a little bit of glue underneath the Scotch tape, but the Scotch tape stickiness itself would help to maybe position it. And then you could put, you know, your CA glue and your whatever texture over the top of that later. I think that'd be cool. Let's see here. We need to get some goggles to science this up. I've got some goggles, but then I can't see what I'm doing because I don't have my glasses on. I've got a face shield. I could do that, but I don't think it's super important actually with baking soda and glue. I can get so far into basing that the mini can sometimes become a secondary aspect. Oh, totally, especially as the base gets bigger. Who said that? Terry Saunders. So, yeah, like I love to tell like a little story, you know, with my basing, especially on these big guys. So when you've got this, you know, plague claw catapult and it's rolling along, like you can see up here, there's a rat up here. He's putting more, I don't know what that stuff is, goop. I don't know. It's probably rat poop. I'm not sure. But he's putting it into the plague claw, which is going to fling it at people. There are also two more Skaven that'll be sitting here and here, but I'm painting them separately on corks, and then I will attach them. I've drilled little holes, and I've pinned their feet so you can see like where they're going to go. But I loved the idea that there was like, you know, like in World War I when they had the trench warfare, and they had those planks, you know, so that they could run across the planks and not be in mud. So I kind of did something like that, and I've got these planks here, which are just, like I said, simple coffee stir wooden sticks. And I've got them there, but I've kind of got them sort of covered with mud, which is actually, again, baking soda and CA. There's a little bit of black sand over here to give it like a rougher texture. There's a lot of kitty litter, some of it in chunks, some of it in, you know, that kind of stuff. Here's a skull, which, again, you can see him. Here are some toothpicks, which people overseas have a tendency to call, I think, cocktail sticks. I don't know. Anyway, I've taken some of them and I've glued them to the base as well, so they almost look like little tiny fence posts. So you can kind of see them there. And yeah, so I get really into doing a lot of different stuff. There's some cork bits over here, and because I like the bases specifically on these big things to look really interesting. And I do it all ahead of time. Now, people are going to say, yeah, but you can't paint what's going on underneath, you know, the platform of the, you know, catapult. But I kind of don't care. Like, if I can at least spray in there with my airbrush or whatever, you can barely see it. So if it's not painted other than just like a simple base coat, it'll be like a shadow. It'll just be the darkest part, and it'll be just a built-in shadow, and so it doesn't matter. I don't need to paint everything underneath there. I mean, I didn't even make the little planks go underneath there. I added them in later, and it worked out just fine. So, yeah, so that's what I do like, that type of basing. I really do. Let's see here. I also dislike the regiment-based stuff on fantasy. That was my reason for me to get into AOLs. Now I'm building my Dark Elves. Cool. Yeah, I didn't like the rank and flank, just as a play style, and I don't like the look of it. But get the White King with the Black Axe / Krell. His new rules are insane and looks good. I do have Krell the Undying, or Lord of Undeath, or whatever his name is. I had to modify him because he's a Finecast figure, and his axe, the Black Axe, which is very fancy and is all bendy because it's stupid Finecast. So I modified it. I don't know if I showed that off last week or not. I think I did. What I did was I ended up cutting off, like, so here's his two hands, right? So that where the axe goes this way, you can't see this, where the axe goes this way, I cut that off and I put one of the axes from the Blight Kings in there. And it looks pretty good. He's probably going to get primed today, too, because he's all ready to go. His textures are all done and everything like that. So I'll be doing a bunch of priming this afternoon because it's lovely outside for once. So, yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to that guy. If you put the models in the microwave for about 5 to 10 minutes, that gets them off their bases pretty good. Works better with lead models. Do not do that. Do not put lead models into the microwave. Retarded Batman is messing with us, so don't do that. Let's see here. Let's see. You said in the last video that people should sell stuff. Do you have Dark Elf stuff? I don't have any Dark Elf stuff. I've never liked Eldar, Dark Eldar. I don't like anything elfish. I don't know why. Like GW, like anything that GW makes that's elvish or Eldar-ish, I've just never liked the aesthetic of, never liked the look of. I don't know why. I just never have. So I don't have any. Let's see here. Do you happen to know the exact size of the oval bases that Hex Wraiths come packaged with nowadays? No? Not off the top of my head. They're down in the basement. I've built 5 Hex Wraiths. I don't have them up here to show you because I haven't textured their bases yet, so they're not getting, primed or anything today. And actually, one of them is still, his goofy scythe is not glued on as well as I would like, and I need to reinforce it a bit. So, Archaon of the Iron Thorn says, cool Plague Claw. Well, thank you. I like that model a lot, so I was glad to get it, and I was glad to see how big the base was in comparison, and it gave me lots of room to do all kinds of cool kind of base conversions and stuff like that, so... Plague Claw Poop Loader surely has to be the lowliest of Skaven jobs. Probably, especially since he has to stand on the actual arm that throws the poop, because I bet you that there's times when he ends up getting flung, because the Skaven are not highly trained, so he's probably he's a rat, basically. He's a big rat, so he's probably nimble, but I still figure that from time to time he gets flung, and that's probably bad, so, yeah. Let's see here. Have you assembled the Mortarch yet? If you have, how difficult is it to assemble? I have not assembled the Mortarch yet. So, the Mortarch can be built in 3 different ways. There's Arcan, something like that, who's the guy who's on the front of the box. There's also, but he's more Tomb King-ish. He looks very Egyptian, and I'm not going that direction. Then there's also Nefertata, who's also kind of Egyptian, but with paint and a little bit of work, I bet you I could make her look a little bit more, or a little bit less Egyptian. And then there's Manfred. Now, I like Manfred the best, but Nefertata does have a lot of good synergies, and she would be a pretty good figure. So I'm trying to figure out, and I swear that somebody mentioned recently that there's an article about it, but I'm thinking about how do I possibly magnetize it so I can swap between Manfred and Nefertiti, whatever her name is. So I'm thinking about doing that, but I haven't really. I've been working on all these other smaller guys first, because her being a big figure, or him, depending if I go with Manfred or whatever, but that big figure I think is going to be added later. I want to get, like, I've got a bunch of heroes either done or ready to be primed and painted and stuff. Then I'm going to be working on a bunch of these skeletons, including some archers, which I don't even have here because I haven't worked on them yet. So the bigger figures for, like, I bought a Terrorgeist on eBay, which came literally just in a box with a bunch of parts and some bubble wrap. That's going to be a pain to put back together and to figure out. And plus I'm going to have to put him on an oval base because he's on a square base right now, or big rectangle. So that's going to take some work, but some of the bigger guys for Death are going to take me some time to get to. I'm probably not going to go into Gash at all any time. I think that Mortarch is probably going to be one of the bigger ones. Let's see here. Minotaur Splash says, hello from Nevada. Well, hello. Small question, what brand of primer do you use through your airbrush? I generally use Vallejo Airbrush Surface Primer, which I think that I got from a company called Dick Blick, which is a big art supply online seller. I think you can also get it through Amazon and places like that. I've been really happy with it. I've got black, I've got like the light gray, and I've got white. The white has a tendency to dry out on me a lot. It dries out on the tip of my airbrush quite a bit, which the black doesn't as much, but there's ways around there to get that. I know that Badger also makes a line of primers called Stynylrez, which I own. I bought some at Adepticon a couple years ago. I just haven't quite gotten to using it yet because I've got this other stuff, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't like to mix back and forth, so I'm like, maybe once my Vallejo runs out, then I'll start using the Stynylrez. I know a lot of people like it, and I know that just recently they've come out with not just white, gray, and black. They've also started coming out in base colors, which is a really smart idea on their part, because now you'd be like, I can prime and base coat in, like a rusted red or in a specific dark blue or whatever. So that was a brilliant idea. So if you're looking into getting into some primers and you would like to get some colored airbrush primers, I think the Badger stuff is really interesting. Imperial Torches says that I did show the axe. Oh, good. I should write some notes down or something. Let's see here. The Coneheads from Saturday Night Live and the GW Eldar have the same goofy look. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of that. I don't know why they do that, but that is a thing. I mean, even the helmets in like Lord of the Rings had those sort of pointy, conehead looks to some degree. So I don't know. It must just be a thing. Let's see. What do you have in your Nurgle army at the moment? Oh gosh. So I've got probably a dozen Warriors of Chaos. They're all done and painted. I've got Goat People. They're all done and painted. Probably about 10 of those. I've got 3 Varangard, which are done and painted. I have that Rotbringer Sorcerer is done and painted. Lord of Plagues, Gutrot Spume. All these guys are done and painted. And what else have I got? I know I've got more stuff than that. I can't think of everything. Stuff that's not done and painted. I got 5 Chaos Knights. Got the Glotkin. I've got a painted group of Putrid Blight Kings, 5 of them, which are great. I really love those models so much. But yeah, so I've got a bunch of stuff done. If you follow me on any kind of social media, like whether it's on Facebook or whether it's on Instagram, that kind of stuff, you've probably seen some pictures because I've been taking pictures when I go play games and stuff at my local store. Yeah. Let's see here. I was in Hong Kong a couple months ago, and there was a crazy Skaven army converted to 16th century Edo period samurai. That does sound pretty cool. That sounds like a lot of work, too, but it does sound pretty cool. Let's see here. The Shark Lion beast. Shark Lion. I don't think I want to mess with a Shark Lion. I quite like a lot of the skeleton models and probably would have done an undead army, but thinking about painting the skeleton hordes gave me nightmare flashbacks to painting Tyrannid Hormagaunts. Well, yeah, that's the trick. The thing is that in Age of Sigmar, you're not going to need nearly as many of the, not nearly as many skeletons as you did probably in Fantasy, like 8th edition or whatever. So that's a benefit. I'm finding, I have... I've got a video you can watch about how to quick paint, to some degree, a skeleton horde and the steps that I did for it. And that's what I'll be doing with these guys over here, because there's a bunch of them, but I want to be able to go through that. My next step this afternoon is to decide whether or not I'm going to stick these guys onto those paint stirrers to use for stirring house paint, where I'm going to stick 4 or 5 of them per paint stirrer and then prime them, or if I'm going to prime them and then stick them on. I'm not 100% sure which way I want to go about that. I got to think about that a little bit more this afternoon. So there's that. Let's see here. I started converting a Chaos Mortal army 10 years back to 5,000 points. All minis are unique, but never got painted. I wonder why. Well, yeah, sometimes that's the problem. That's why I'm not building my entire Nurgle army before I paint. I'm building a smallish force, painting it, so I've got something to play. I'm going to build a smallish force of these undead and get them painted so I can start playing with them, and then start going back and adding things to the Nurgle stuff, start going back and adding things to the, and adding things like this to the Nurgle stuff, and then going back and adding stuff to the death stuff. But building 2 small starter forces and then going up from there, that's, for me at least, because I want to be able to teach more people how to play and things like that. That's what I want to do. Other people will build a humongous force and then just play it and slowly paint as they go. I find that I have a hard time painting something, or I can't play it when it's in the process of being painted. Like once it's primed, it's stuck to either those paint sticks, or it's stuck to corks or pill bottles or whatever, and then it is just not playable until it's finished. So that's why I kind of am going in stages like this. Let's see here. DHXMG says, I'm using the black and white Badger primers. They work wonderfully so far. Yeah, I've heard good things about the Steinres stuff. So yeah, that's cool. Let's see here. Bone is actually pretty quick to paint. I just paint the bone parts with Ushtabi bone and give them an army painter brown shade. That's kind of what I'm doing to some degree. I've found that I like even better. I use the stuff from Krylon. So Krylon makes a line of camouflage paints. I've got a video about a review, actually, of the Krylon camouflage spray paints. They make 6 colors. There's black, there's dark brown. The dark brown is what I'm going to use on this here, the Plague Claw Catapult. And then there's 2 like dark greens, kind of a military green. One's dark, one's light. And then there's 2 tan. One's like dark and one light. So what I did is, as my primer and base coat. I just use, I forget which color I use, but it's the tan, one of the tan, and I spray all these skeletons with it. So now their bone color is already completely, nearly done as far as paint is concerned. I get them all done. Then I base coat all the rest of the stuff. So like, the spear will be one color, and the shield will be another color, and the ground, I don't bother with the ground until I'm done. And then I throw a sepia wash over everything pretty much, and that helps. And then you go back and do some dry brush with like a bleached bone color, and honestly, yeah, they can paint up pretty quick. If you start getting really fancy with all the shields and the banner guy will take longer. That's understandable, but yeah, skeletons can go pretty quickly. Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm starting to hate painting skeletons. I have 25 skeletons to be painted yet, and I am so tired. Well, I have found that when I'm kind of stuck, or if I've got too many people or too much stuff to do, I break it up into 5s. So rather than trying to attack all 25 at once, I do 5 and then do the next 5 and then do the next 5. I find that can go quicker. These guys, I'm going to try to do as many as 20 at once, which is going to be hard for me, but we'll see how it goes. I might start that way and then all of a sudden be like, nope, this is too daunting, and go back to doing 5 at a time, but we'll see. But generally in the past, I've only ever painted things in groups of 5, because then you paint, maybe you do the shield on the first guy, then you do the shield on the second guy, and then you do the shield on the third guy, and you do the shield on the fourth guy, and then you do the shield on the fifth guy, and then you're done, and this guy's already dry, just because it's been, 20 minutes or whatever, and then you can go to the next step on him, whereas if you have to do 20 shields and then come all the way back again, that can take a lot more work, and that can be problematic. Let's see here. Chris Dog 88 says, good morning. Good morning. Adam, all the models you've made, which is your absolute favorite, and can you show it to us? Oh gosh, that's a good question. Can I show it to you? No, it would be down in the basement, and I would have to go find it, and there would be a bunch of dead air, but I can maybe look forward to it in the future. I do want to do either a video or start maybe sometimes showing, like I like showing these models to you guys. I'm not obviously building anything, which is why it makes the build and chat a misnomer, obviously. But I do like being able to show stuff here like this, and so you can kind of see where I'm at. And, some of these skeleton guys, I wish it would focus a little closer. I got to work on that. But I have thought about taking some finished models that I've got and showing them here, so I could kind of talk about, like why I did this and how I did that. And I'm going to be probably doing some of those in the future as well. Right now, I've been mostly focusing on Age of Sigmar, and a lot of it's unpainted, so that's why you're seeing a lot of the stuff the way it is here. Let's see here. I still have about 60 Tomb King skeletons waiting to be built. I have built and painted 5 skeleton horse riders and 3 chariots, but now I have to do something else for a while. That's a big portion of being motivated, I think, in your hobby, is to sometimes when you get tired of one thing, switching up and doing something else. One of the reasons I was super glad to get these guys is because I did not have to build them. These skeletons can be fiddly, especially this many of them, to build, because I'm going to just start bringing out the rest of them so you can see, what I'm talking about here. But the skeletons can be really fiddly to build. So when my friend came to me and said, "Hey, I've got these skeletons you might be interested in buying," and they were really, really reasonably cheap, then I said, "Yeah," and I was looking at them and going, "Okay, I'm going to have to cut, their bases off, and I'm going to have to go through all that." But really, it was not bad at all, and so I've been pretty happy with that. This is this is a lot, isn't it? I honestly textured all these guys last night. Well, not last night. I did a little bit in the afternoon, and then the rest of it was in the evening. All the extra bits. I don't think you can even see all these in the window anymore. I'm going to start putting them over here. So yeah, this is nearly 30 skeletons. The last one is stuck. There we go. So yeah, that's a lot of skeletons. And they'll all be getting primed today, which will be interesting. Like I said, I still haven't decided if I'm going to stick them onto paint stirrers or if I'm going to just put them all on a thing and spray them all. The problem is that when you do that, you have to spray them all, and you're spraying, and then you have to knock them all down, onto their front, and then spray them kind of below once they've dried a bit, and then knock them onto their back and do it. Whereas if I have them on a paint stirrer, I can spray them and turn them around all kinds of different angles. When I do that with an airbrush, it totally makes sense. With a rattle can, I'm concerned I'm going to spray paint my hand a lot, so I don't know. I'll probably wear gloves. Let's see here. I wanted to use the skeleton bits for basing, but somehow ended up building them. Yeah, actually, honestly, the first box of skeletons I ever bought several years back, I bought them because I wanted to use them for basing. There's a company called Wargamers Factory, I think, that makes a set of skeletons that are really inexpensive, and you get like 20 or something like that in the box, and they are terrible for gaming because they're super flimsy. Like, these skeletons are really quite thick. If you were to look at a real human skeleton, they would be a lot skinnier than this. But then the problem is that Wargames Factory made very, very skinny, like scale model skeletons, but you can barely glue them to bases and stuff because they're so flimsy, and like you would pick them up and they would just flex just from holding them, and they make me nervous. But they are great for basing. This little skeleton here on the front of this Plague Claw catapult, that's a Wargames Factory skeleton, and I use Wargames Factory skeleton bits for basing for terrain or for bigger models and things like that all the time because they work great. They really do. So let's see here. I've seen your tutorials on pre-shading and highlighting with an airbrush. Would you recommend these methods for 15mm? And if so, any differences such as nozzle size? I don't know much about nozzle size, frankly. I've never really bothered to use the different nozzle than the one that came with my airbrush. With 15mm, I don't know that the shading and that kind of stuff would make a ton of sense. Like, I have built and painted infantry for Flames of War, and I just pretty much primed it, and then I went at it with a brush. Yeah, they're so small, I think that shading is going to get lost, frankly. Let's see here. It feels like we've turned the corner on all of Age of Sigmar hate. I've seen a lot of people getting into the game. Yeah, and because it was new, and it was a drastic change from what was old, I understood, and I understood that a lot of the anger and the hate and all that kind of stuff was going to come out. And I do see people now who had basically been doing fantasy for a long time, a couple of different podcasts, who were like, yeah, I'm just not really into this. I'm not feeling this Age of Sigmar thing. And I've seen them come around and really get back into it and really start to enjoy it. There's a great podcast that was about fantasy called Skull Bros Awesome. And I've been listening to them for a long time, even though I didn't play fantasy, because they're funny. They're very funny, and also they're really into the hobby and the painting. They're very good painters, like all of them. And yeah, they had basically, when Age of Sigmar came out, they were like, meh. And now they both played, the two main hosts both played in the tournament at Adepticon, and they're both like really jazzed, and they really like it, and they've been putting lots of time and stuff now into, rebasing armies and doing things like that, because like I said, they're big hobby heroes, so they're really into they had to make sure that they got everything on the right bases that they wanted to and all that stuff and everything. But yeah, I saw their stuff at Adepticon. I talked to them for a while. They're great guys. But on Sunday we had a talk. Baroska, Roeder, and we talked about how the tournament had gone and how much they really enjoyed it, because it was a very interesting kind of. There's a lot of different stuff going on. It wasn't just like a standard tournament. There was a lot of narrative and interesting stuff going on. So, yeah, that was cool. Let's see here. Hi from Spain. I recently tried AOS with a friend of mine and loved it. Really lets you play with smaller skirmish forces of 20 to 30 miniatures. How many models do you put into your AOS armies? I generally, at this point, still put in around 20 to 30. Closer to 30 in the games that we play. Because I'm usually like picking the army on the fly, as we're kind of doing that thing that's set up in the beginning, and that's roughly where we're at right now for the games that I'm playing locally with friends. But yeah, it's cool. What do you think of Total War Warhammer? Do you think it will bring more people to Age of Sigmar? I'm not sure about that. I've seen some YouTube stuff about it. I haven't played it myself. It might bring some more people into it. That's kind of cool. It's obviously a very different sort of setup and things like that, and it's also still, I believe, old world. It's not the new Age of Sigmar world, so there might be some difference there, definitely. Thoughts on painting on the sprue before assembling? I have never understood it. I know people do it. I've never liked it myself, personally, because after you get it all painted, then you'd have to cut it off and then fix the parts where you cut it off, and like, how do you get rid of the mold lines and all that stuff? And So it's never been for me, but I know some people do it, and that's cool. But it's not for me. Listening to this while painting my Bretonnian army. Only 14 knights, 37 men at arms, and a Pegasus to go. I may be here for a while. Yes, you may be here for a while. I'll be here for another 45 minutes, but yeah, that'll be a. I like the Bretonnians a lot too, and I really do hope that they do some new stuff with the humans in general. I think it'd be really great if they kind of add some stuff, but that'll probably be sometime next year. I keep getting distracted from my main projects by all these other cool things. It's quite frustrating. Yeah, I should do a video about that and how to combat it as soon as I figure out kind of how to combat it. That might help. Yeah. Remember the older GW plastic skeletons that would snap on their forearms? No, not really. I've only ever really dealt with these guys, and the Vampire Counts version of these guys, which is... So, like, this is a Vampire Counts skeleton, okay? And this is a Tomb King skeleton. I don't know. Like, they look a good deal alike. The Vampire Count skeletons have a little bit more armor sometimes. These guys are a little bit more naked, but these guys have helmets, whereas these guys don't generally always. So, let's see here. What cheaper alternatives to Games Workshop would you recommend? Do they hold up at the same quality models as GW? It kind of depends. Mantic makes some really good undead. I think their dwarves are pretty interesting too, but I don't know much else. I don't know many other companies that make stuff like that for these bigger kind of... If you're looking for specific heroes, there's lots of companies that do specific heroes that you could use to, alternate in comparison or in complete difference. But yeah, Mantic does some great stuff for that. Like, yeah. I really like the standalone games, so Silver Tower sounds quite interesting. Yeah, I'm going to have to definitely watch some play videos about Silver Tower, because I would like to find out more. Let's see here. Just got in on the chat, and as a huge Total War fan, it made me want to get into Warhammer. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to plenty of people who had gotten into Tabletop 40K because of Dawn of War, so I think there's probably some of that comes along, definitely. I think that Total War has taken the place of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, hence Age of Sigmar has always been leaning that way. That's potentially the case. I could see that. Let's see. An Age of Sigmar RTS would be really cool. I could see an Age of Sigmar game kind of like Dawn of War 2, which is smaller groups. Like Dawn of War 1, if any of you have played it, which I suspect probably some of you have, is much more traditional RTS in that you put down bases. Here's some barracks, here's a building that does this, here's a building that does that, and then you build squads of guys, and they just kind of go out in blocks and do stuff. But Dawn of War 2 was much more like, I have 5 guys and nearly no buildings, and every once in a while you might lay down like a signal repeater or a satellite dish array or whatever. But you were moving your guys, and it was a lot more about the tactics of moving these guys and getting this guy into cover, and stuff like that. That's the type of Age of Sigmar game that I think would be sort of interesting to see, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything about Age of Sigmar computer game or video game in any way properties yet, but that'll be interesting. Can we talk in this chat about other games or companies? I don't know. Oh yeah, certainly. I've been focusing mostly on Age of Sigmar lately because that's what I've been building and painting, but we can totally talk about whatever. People have been asking me earlier about Frostgrave and Malifaux and things like that, so yeah, totally. That's not a problem. Afternoon from Saudi. Well, hello. Masking tape is also effective to cover the slots in the bases, and no glue is needed to glue it. Also, acetone in nail polish remover will melt plastic, so use it carefully. Yeah, I can see that. The acetone can definitely, in nail polish remover, could melt plastic. Definitely melt like resin or fine cast. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't used it to like pop off the CA debonder stuff that you can buy that is designed to make it so that CA glue debonds works okay. It doesn't work great. The reason I'm not using it on these guys to take them off of the square bases like this is because their feet are so small. It seems like a knife would do the job just fine, and so far I've been right. If these guys had like much bigger, like they were Space Marines, that's a much bigger. Like the bottom foot on a Space Marine is much bigger than the bottom foot on these dudes, and I think it would take a lot longer to get off. So then I would probably use, and I have used in the past, the debonder stuff. Actually, a friend of mine he bought 20 goat people at Adepticon, and then he decided he didn't want them, and he sold them to me for like $12, which was a crazy good deal. But they were on 32 millimeter round bases. And I was like, I don't want them on. All my other goat people are on 25 millimeters. So I went through and I put debonder on their little, because their feet are bigger than the skeletons. And then I would slowly work it with a knife and pop them off. I was listening to that podcast and stuff while I was doing it. And so now I have a whole bunch of extra 32 millimeter bases. Then I haven't glued those goat people onto 25s, but I will eventually. But yeah, so debonder works pretty well when the feet get bigger. But for guys like this who are, pretty skinny and got tiny little feet, the knife works just fine. Have you played Infinity? The models look really good, but I don't know about the gameplay. I have played a little bit of Infinity. I had actually Painter Sam from the channel, gave me a demo about a month and a half back or whatever, and I have to admit that the demo that we played, which was a simplified kind of rule set to some degree, we didn't play with all of the definite rules because there's a lot of detail in that game. It seems very different from any other wargame I've ever played. Like the rules are very different. At the time, I thought to myself, it seemed as if it was a game that was done by somebody who had never played a war game before. I'm not saying that they're wrong in what they did, but it doesn't follow a lot of the other tropes and kind of rules, ideas, and concepts to some degree that a lot of other war games seem to do. So that's interesting. The models they're well done models. They're metal models, which I'm not super keen on. Plus, they're very, very kind of anime. Not necessarily the giant-eyed girls and all that kind of stuff. It's not super cutesy anime, but it's a very clean, future sci-fi aesthetic that still, I think, pulls a lot from anime, which does not, frankly, sit super well with me. So that's why I haven't jumped into it. I've had plenty of people asking me about it and saying, oh, you should get into Infinity and you should do some stuff about Infinity and all that kind of stuff. But it just had me, and I own some Infinity models, but I just, like the one that I put together initially, if you go back onto Beasts of War, back when I used to work on Beasts of War a long time ago, back between 2010 and 2013, I did an unboxing of a special model. Like if you bought this special case from Battle Foam, and it was like the Infinity Alpha case, I think, and it was this big case. If you were one of those first 750 people who bought it, you got this special edition Infinity model. And I put that guy together, and did an unboxing and showed it off on Beasts of War. And that nearly killed me. That guy had so many tiny little weird metal parts, little fins coming off his shoulders and all this stuff, and it was just... So that sort of has turned me a little bit off of Infinity, I'm not going to lie. But I've got a bunch of friends that are starting to get into it now here around locally, and so I'm thinking about it. I mean, I know a lot of people who played Fantasy when Age of Sigmar came along. They stopped playing Age of Sigmar and they moved into Infinity, which was interesting. But I know that there's a bunch of people that are doing like that. Dawn of War 2 Age of Sigmar mod, that would be sweet. Yeah, I agree. Let's see here. I've been out of GW products for like 10 years, looking to get into it. Would you suggest AOS to get back into the hobby? I frankly would, because you can play it with so many fewer models than you can in 40K, in my opinion. Plus, now with all the Start collecting boxes out there, the Start collecting boxes are amazing deals. We've been talking about them a little bit earlier. Like this Skeleton Horde box was $85, but it comes with, not the Skeleton Horde, these guys are not in there, but there's a Skeleton Horde box that I talked about in the last show that we did 2 weeks ago. And that box comes with an $80 model in it, plus also 10 skeletons, plus also 5 cavalry. So, it's a really good deal. The Lizardmen one, the Seraphon, they're an $85 Start collecting box, and it comes with an $85 model in it. You know what I mean? The Carnosaur. And so it's crazy. They're really good bundles. So, yeah, that'd be something to look into if you're interested, is starting with one of those boxes and then kind of building from there. It is a great way to get in, and you can play with a small amount of models to get the feel of the game and then build up if you like, which is what ChrisDog88 just said. Let's see here. The funniest army to play is the one that you like more. The lore, the look, etc. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's especially in something like Age of Sigmar right now, because the points are not a big deal and that kind of thing. Like if you're getting into tournament and you want to win, once the new rules come out, for the points and stuff like that, then you're going to be able to look and say, well, these guys are costed well and these guys are overcosted or whatever, and go from there. But for just playing a normal game, I'm always about just having a good time, and so I want to have models that I like as opposed to models that I don't. It's just the way it works. Let's see here. HC Leo, she says, not an Infinity fan, I'm afraid. The backstory just doesn't seem as appealing as Age of Sigmar. I don't know much about the Infinity backstory, I'm honest. I know that they're out in space and there's things going on, and it's very sci-fi, kind of not quite dystopian, but maybe a little dystopian. For me, it's basically just I don't like the models are problematic right now for me, so that's kind of a thing. Do they sell a starter box for Age of Sigmar? Yes, there is a starter box. It comes with 2 forces. It comes with some Stormcast, who are the big kind of gold armored guys with giant shields and stuff like that. And then it also comes with Khorne kind of chaos guys. So there's 2 forces in there. So if you split that box with a friend, they could take one and you could take the other. Or some people will buy it because they really want these guys and they sell the other guys on eBay or whatever. But you also don't need to start with that box. You can also start with any of the start collecting boxes from Age of Sigmar, and then the rules for Age of Sigmar are free. It's a 4-page rules document you download online for free. Plus, you can also use the app. The app is really nice, actually. I don't know that this is going to work at all, but well, maybe you guys can see this. So there's a Warhammer Age of Sigmar app, and the rules are like right in there, so you can see everything you need. And it's right in, for your phone or your tablet or whatever, Android, iOS. It's a great system to get started with, frankly. Let's see here. I've been trying to get my Elven. Oh, I'm sorry, not Elven. I've been trying to get my 11-year-old into the hobby. The AOS rule set seems really good for this, and much to my surprise, she really digs the undead size of things. Well, the undead are just cool. That's just the way I think the undead are cool. I've always been a big fan of skeletons. So, yeah, and that's the thing, is that, there are some people out there who are like, oh man, Age of Sigmar is not very... I find it's a little bit like chess. Chess is easy to understand. You can teach people chess, but the strategy is really the part, down the road that makes it a lot more challenging over time. You can teach a kid how to play chess, that these figures do this and this figure does that, but it's easy to beat a kid in chess frequently because they don't understand thinking ahead several turns and all that kind of stuff. Age of Sigmar is along those same lines. You can easily teach people who aren't into the hobby too much yet, or people who are younger or whatever, you can teach them this stuff and go through all of that. But then, the people I've seen the people who've said, oh, I think Age of Sigmar is just a big clump in the middle and then it's just a big dice roll off. I don't think they're playing it right, frankly. My Varangard, any kind of cavalry should always, in my opinion, be running up the sides to come around from behind, because then that basically splits people's focus. Instead of going towards the objective, if they're like, those Varangard guys are coming from behind, and I do not like that, they're going to split some guys off, and then you can, there's a lot of things you can do to kind of feint and to, there's a lot that can go on in the strategy, but the rules themselves are relatively simple. Rowan Tree says that the beard is looking good. Well, thank you, I guess. Yeah, I've just been basically using the trimmer on the sides here and just letting this part grow out, which is sort of dumb because it's going to be getting hot soon, so I should probably trim this eventually, and maybe start again in the winter. We'll see how it goes. I love the Age of Sigmar app on my tablet. Yeah. The app is great. I'm astounded when they released it, because it's really, that Games Workshop for a while was having a pretty bad time of anything digital, to some degree, and this is really a great step, I think. So, yeah. Let's see here. I actually like the Stormcast general look, but that face helm, yeah. I've seen lots of people who've been swapping out the head on Stormcast and putting, sometimes they will put, what are those guys? The Space Wolves. They'll put Space Wolves heads. Not that, the hair and the beard and all that stuff. They'll throw those heads on top of there. Those can look kind of cool on Stormcast, so that might be something to think about. Yeah, they're kind of interesting that way. And but the generic helmet, some people just don't like the look of it. I can understand that. Let's see here. Just wanted to thank you for reminding me to base my models in that video. I have a bunch that I haven't based properly yet, and I'm working on it right now. Absolutely. Oddity Iron Cog. I see so many pictures of people, who've been working on a thing and they've completely painted this model, and the base is completely empty. Now, if you are, and I've had some people who commented on that video a couple of weeks ago who were like, I don't like texture on the base because then it doesn't match the table. So if you like get done painting your model and then you just paint the base black again and you just want to have a black plastic base, great. I have no problem with that. You know, having a black plastic base just because that's the way you aesthetically would like it is fine. What I don't like is when I see people who are walking around with fully painted models and things like that, and they're taking pictures and they're, you know, playing them in games and things like that, but there's just the paint from the model like stuck all over the base and they haven't based it yet. The other thing I don't like is, and I see people do this, and again, it's a personal preference. My personal preference is I don't like the concept of taking like sand and some glue and gluing it to the base and then not painting it and going, well, the sand is sand colored, so why would I paint it? There are reasons why. It doesn't look right to most people when you've got some stuff that's painted and other stuff that's not. Your eye can pick it out just right off the bat. You can look at it and go, that part's not painted. That's weird. So yeah, I mean, I talked to Sam and I said, have there ever been any crystal brush winners where they've just sprinkled sand on the base and not painted it? And he's like, no. It's like everybody paints everything. Even like when you use the green like static grass on a base for something you're going to do crystal brush quality work with, he says those painters will still go back and even dry brush the tips of the static grass as it picks up so that it can have some variation to it, which is crazy, but that's why those guys win awards and I don't. So yeah, and I just think it's best to texture first, because then when you prime, you've put a layer of primer over the texture now, which just helps to keep it onto the base. That's basically a recap of the video I did a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, let's see here. Just started getting into minis. Love your content. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you, Idiot Tech. I appreciate it. I enjoy the Stormcast heroes and stronger units. The basic troops are a bit fugly. I'm not. Yeah, the shoulders are definitely kind of weird to me. I kind of don't like those. Let's see here. Fox 532 says, I love Age of Sigmar. The game for me is fun. Yeah, I think that a lot of people are starting to really kind of start getting into it. Cyberwolf says, maybe you can film battle reports to illustrate what you're talking about. I'm not sure which part. Oh, for AOS. Well, yeah, I do plan on doing some battle reports for that as well, too, once I get that stuff figured out. Let's see. So is GW planning on recombining the Wood Elves and the Sylvaneth armies again? Or are the Sylvaneth doomed to be a sub-army mercs? I get the feeling that, again, because of the sort of liquid kind of way that things can be formed in this game, you can kind of mix them together however you want. But from what I understand, like, elves are going to be elves. It's not going to be like, well, high elves and like wood elves is two separate armies anymore. It's pretty much they can mix together, just like you can mix together, Tomb Kings and vampire counts. Chris Dog says all elves are the same faction now. Yes. Let's see here. I saw a guy that converted his Stormcast Eternals to make dwarves Stormcast with the general mounted on a giant bear. They are amazing. He calls it the Forged Sworn Eternals. There was a person just recently in the... where is it here? There was somebody who was just recently... Oops, I must have closed it. There. Somebody here in the Paint Showcase Club just recently was putting the Stormcast shield on a dwarf to see like the comparison in size and things like that, and it looked really cool. It looked like this dwarf was, I'm not finding it here, it looked like the dwarf had a giant like tower shield. Oh, this was astounding too. If you guys go and look at the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club, this is an amazing piece of freehand on the front of all these Eldar jet bikes. They are crazy looking. Yeah, so a lot of people, there's 67, 68, 69 likes on this, but yeah, these were amazing looking. I just was going to mention that. I don't know where the heck that... There was this guy who was working on putting big shields on the, what do you call them, on the dwarves, and I thought it looked really good, but now I can't find it. There's been an astounding amount of content coming onto this recent... Here they are. So yeah, so this is basically just him kind of dry fitting. Alexander John Harvey was dry fitting, that dwarf, which I think is really cool looking, with this big honking, Stormcast shield, which looks amazing in comparison. Peter crossbow thing, that doesn't look nearly as good as it turns out. He did try to shorten it up by shaving some of it out, but it's still just kind of sort of way too big. So I don't know about that, but definitely with the shield, I think that looks super cool. There's been tons of comments, and somebody in here, if I remember correctly, like started to show some of the big shields that people would hide behind. You know, this is from, I think that's from the movie Gladiator. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting. That kind of stuff is fun to see on the, you know, on the Facebook page for the Paint Showcase Club, as it were. But yeah, those giant shields I think would be kind of interesting. Let's see here. A friend is sending me her old still boxed Dark Eldar stuff. Excited to paint something new. Yeah, painting something new always does help, I think. You know, like if you get stuck on skeletons for too long or whatever, and then you paint, you know, you go back and do some Nurgle stuff. I mean, if you're me, let's say, then yeah, I think that does help to break things up. It helps with motivation. Sometimes it also helps to completely change games and paint some guys for Malifaux or whatever. Yeah. So, yeah. Do I think that the Seraphon Star Priest and other models' summon rules are fair? In the games that I've played with summoning, I have not so far found too many troubles with summoning. And the reasons are this. In the rules, let's say you start out the game and you have 22 models on the board. All you have to do to win, I'm sorry, your opponent has 22 models on the board. All you have to do to win is to kill 22 models. You don't have to kill the starting 22 models, but you have to kill 22 models. So if in the first turn, kill the guy that can do the summoning. So if you target that that wizard, and maybe he has to spend his wizarding, you know, hero phase on trying to give himself Mystic Shield so he doesn't get killed, well then he can't fire off a summon that turn. So I'm not super concerned with summons yet. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the new points rules and how that stuff works. But yeah, summoning doesn't bother me so much yet. I haven't, like, honestly, the few times that people have actually summoned in games that I've played, it's basically just bring back a unit that already just got killed. You know what I mean? So, like, well, these guys, these lizardmen all got killed, so I'm going to summon another one. And then, you know, that was just my fault because I didn't kill his guy who could do the summoning yet. So, yeah, I don't think it's too big of a deal, frankly, myself. Alex Williams says those jet bikes are just ridiculous. I'm going to put something in the paint club soon. Thanks for setting that. Don't really know anyone who is into the hobby, so it's cool to get feedback there. Yeah, I just thought, like, it had been happening for a while where people, like, every once in a while people would post something onto the Tabletop Minions normal Facebook page, like, hey, here's this model I worked on. And then people would respond to it by posting their own pictures. I'm like, oh, I was working on this, and I was working on this. And I kept seeing this happen from time to time, and I thought, I wonder. And so I was really glad to see people who were interested in showing off their work, because a lot of it is amazing looking. People were asking for questions. People were, you know, getting people's opinion and that kind of stuff. And I think it's worked out really well. So I'm glad that I was able to kind of do that. And I've been amazed by the amount of work, or the work that's coming out. You know, people are putting pictures in. I'm going to be going through and grabbing some of those images and then probably either do a video and talk about them. I might talk about them here on the you know, on the live show, but I think I'll probably be doing a kind of a video showcase, maybe monthly, to show off some of the stuff that I'm really super impressed by that you guys are putting in there. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's see here. I hop around a lot. I painted my Stormcasts, then my old first edition Brotherhood from Warzone, then some Heavy Troopers from Dreamforge, then my Firstborn from Chronopia. Love to mix it up. Yeah, Melanie, totally. That does help me and keep me kind of motivated. Like, if you just start getting beaten down by, like, oh, I have to paint so many more skeletons, switch it up, paint something else for a bit, and then come back. That's just, I think it just works best for keeping your motivation high. Let's see here. John Eric says, I've been playing Age of Sigmar regularly since February, and I enjoy it a lot. I play Greenskins and love my new Ironjaws army. Gordak is crazy. Yeah, those new orc models are crazy. Like that big 32, that big boss, you know, with the big giant whatever skull on his shoulder. I kind of want one of those just to paint, even though I don't play orcs, but they are sweet looking. My friend who owns the store, he built one just recently because he's starting to go more destruction and less. He had been going chaos for a while, but now he's going more destruction. And he likes the look of it a lot, and it looks amazing to me. Let's see here. I have a Bretonian force that I need to finish and rebase for Age of Sigmar. What bases work best for cavalry? Oval or circle? I like the oval ones. Now, when I built my first Chaos Knights, I built them with like the motorcycle bases from 40k, which are that capsule shape where it's like a rectangle and then they're rounded on the edges. But then all of a sudden the cavalry bases for Age of Sigmar started coming out, which are actual ovals. And I think I'm going to rebase them. I haven't textured them or anything like that, so it won't be that hard to pop them off those bases and put them on new bases. But I think I might put them on the ovals because the Varangard look really good on the ovals, and the Hex Wraiths that I built look really good on the ovals. So yeah. Let's see. What's the normal Tabletop Minions webpage? I can't seem to find it. It is tabletopminions.org. It has not been super updated lately, and that's part of what I'd like to do this year is to start updating it more frequently. I would like to maybe start putting some writing, like blog articles on it. Right now I was using it just basically to put up, like, here's another link to the video that I just did or whatever, and I haven't done it much lately because I just haven't seen the big use to it. So, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what exactly to do with the website, but that's what it is, tabletopminions.org, O-R-G. Does anyone play Saga? There was a lot of people playing Saga at Adepticon this year. I was pretty impressed. I know some guys who've gotten out of Fantasy. Some of them went into Infinity, and some of them stayed in Age of Sigmar, and some of them went into Saga. Like, I know some people who've decided like Saga is the way they want to go with their Fantasy, and it's an interesting kind of system, I think. And I'd love to play a demo, and I didn't get a chance this year during Adepticon, but I'd like to play a demo, I think, soon. Oh, Cyberwolf says, what's the Facebook page? If you go into the Tabletop Minions Facebook page, there should be links to the Paint Club page from there. Or if you just do a search for Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club, you should hopefully find it. Otherwise, if you go back a couple videos, I think there was a video last Sunday where I first announced it. If you go to that video, there's a link in the description that you can also follow to get to the Paint Showcase Club. And then you just click, say, join, and then I get an email, and then I say, yep, that person, or I get a notification or whatever on my phone, and then I can say, yep, that person can be in there, and then that's where you go. Let's see here. I painted my entire Betrayal at Kelth set. I was burned out after that. That's a lot of figures, from what I understand. Yeah, they're cool figures, but it's a lot of figures. So yeah, painting that big kind of a setup would be kind of interesting. No books for Age of Sigmar you have to buy unless you want scenarios, etc. Free rules. Yep, you can definitely buy. I mean, that's the thing about Age of Sigmar is that the rules are a free download. You know, there are books that are out there that have got some fluff, they've got some painting guide stuff, and they've got like some different scenarios and things which are cool. But yeah, the books aren't really necessary particularly at all. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see. I love those new Oryx. When I'm not so broke, I am all over those. Yeah, they are really, really cool looking, especially the big guy. And the full plate. Like, you know, everyone complains about how the ones that the GW studio painted are yellow, have that yellow armor, and it looks weird. And I agree to some degree, because I have seen people who've painted that armor to just be like raw iron, and it looks astounding, like really good, especially if you put like a little bit of rust on it or whatever and stuff like that. It looks really cool, I think. So yeah. Oscar, you keep asking 40k or AOS. I don't know what the question, I don't know how to answer that. We're mainly talking about Age of Sigmar, I guess. These skeletons are all for Age of Sigmar, but that's where that's at. Morge asked, do you know about Eden Miniatures game? I think I've heard of Eden Miniatures. I think they do like a post-apocalyptic something or other, but I don't know tons about it. I should look into it more because I am a big post-apocalyptic fan. Yeah, so I'm looking at that. Fox532 says, I would like to create a card game based on being an ESL teacher in China. Oh, that would be kind of interesting, yeah. I haven't played much in the way of card games these days. I used to be more of a card gamer, not like Magic cards, but like games where you get all the cards at once, you know what I mean? I used to be more into that and more into board gaming, and then I got out of board gaming mostly almost altogether, and now I'm pretty much doing this because I like painting little dudes and playing. Honestly, the play style for me of miniatures games in comparison to board games is really kind of the big deal. That's a big deal for me. I like that. I prefer the very open-endedness to this, as opposed to moving along like, well, I have to move these guys along this bit and do that, and I don't know. A lot of board games for me at this point in my life for some reason just aren't striking, which is a bummer to some degree, because I think that, and I've been told by a bunch of my board gaming friends, that if my channel was more about board gaming and less about miniatures gaming, I'd have a lot more viewers and subscribers, because board gaming is much, much more popular, allegedly, than this, which they're right. But yeah, I just don't want to do a channel about, things that I'm not super into. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why I stick with this. I mean, if you look at it, this is very interesting to me. The largest wargaming channel in the world on YouTube, the biggest YouTube channel about wargaming in the entire world, which is to say all of YouTube, is Mini Wargaming. And they have about 215,000 subscribers, which in the realm of video games YouTube channels is really small. Like, there are guys who play a game that's not very well known, and they're maybe younger guys, and they just basically do this channel from their basement or from their bedroom, and they've got more than 215,000 subscribers. But the biggest YouTube channel for wargaming in all of YouTube is 215,000 subscribers. I just passed 20,000 subscribers recently. Beasts of War is like 55,000. You know what I mean? When you look at like the type of content the Beasts of War puts out, and the amount of like the studio space that they've got, and all this stuff going on, and it's 55,000 subscribers. Yeah, it's crazy how like small our niche is in the world of the internet and all that stuff. But I think that most of us that are doing it, and doing it a lot, are really passionate about it. So I think that works out well. I mean, I know I am. That's why I keep doing this, is because I'm passionate about it. So yeah. Let's see, what else have we got here? Drums2Well says, hey Adam, do you think you would have better luck getting your wife into skirmish games if Catalyst made Shadowrun more of a game like Frostgrave? That's a good question. Maybe. I think it would be really super cool if somebody would make a game like Frostgrave that was Shadowrun based. That'd be super cool, now that you mention it. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. That's very interesting. That would be kind of cool. Somebody should do that. Catalyst should do that. If you're watching, you guys should make a skirmish game. Twisted Bishop says, it's interesting. I think he said interesting. It says intestine, but I think he means interesting. It's interesting we had such a bad experience with Infinity models, but not Malifaux. I've had a horrible time assembling some of those tiny parts. I think that, honestly, the main difference is the fact that Malifaux's plastic. I just have a much easier time gluing plastic to plastic than gluing metal to metal. Like, that one figure that I built for Infinity was like, I had to pin so much of that model, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with pinning, what that means generally is that if you have two pieces you need to stick together, sometimes what you do is you drill a hole into one with a tiny little pin vise. You drill a hole, you put a piece of like wire or paper clip into it, and then you drill a hole on the other side, and now you've got this piece of paper clip that's kind of between the two things, and it's a giant pain in the rear sometimes to get done, and it's really difficult getting all that stuff together. But it helps to keep very small metal pieces, together more easily. And it's not as much of a necessity with plastics, because with plastics, the bond is usually stronger, because CA glue is designed to kind of slightly, from what I understand, almost a little bit, well, especially plastic glue. Plastic glue is designed to actually melt a little bit of the surface of the two plastic parts that come together and then bonds them that way. But yeah, metal, not so much. Doesn't stick as well together. So yeah. When am I finishing the show tonight? In about another 10 minutes. I do it from 9 a.m. my time until 11 a.m. my time, and then my wife and I go to lunch at her parents' house, and then after that, my wife has got band practice, and I am going to be priming these dudes out in the driveway, because it's a lovely day out, and then I'm going to mow the lawn. Or I'm going to mow the lawn and then prime these dudes, but I think I might do these guys first and then mow the lawn. So, which I'm not looking forward to mowing the lawn, frankly, but that's part of not living in an apartment, I guess. So that's, there you go. What units do you use in your current Age of Sigmar army? Well, I use a lot of different stuff, mostly Warriors of Chaos in my Nurgle army, and some Goat People, and I'm starting to build some Skaven to add into it. I've got a group of 3 Varangard. I've got Blight Kings. Blight Kings are cool. Tom Siddle says you can't airbrush your board game. Technically true, although you're starting to see more and more board games that have a lot of miniatures in them. You know what I mean? Like Memoir 44, a friend of mine just recently went through and painted his all those tanks for Memoir 44. I know there's Shadows over Camelot. I don't know. There's some other game that a lot of people that I know paint, like the models. Descent is another one. It's kind of a hybrid board game. It's a little bit of a gateway game. But there are sometimes frequently a lot of miniatures in some board games that you can paint. Let's see here. In the video game era, playing with miniatures is like using rocks and sticks in the mud to the outsider. Yeah, to some degree, yeah. I mean, I do see... I think it's much more difficult to get people into miniatures when you explain the difference between those and video games. Like video games, you go to the store, you buy a video game, you plug it in, or you just install it from Steam, depending on whether you're a PC guy or a console guy or whatever, or girl, and then you pretty much start playing. Whereas with what we're doing here, you've got to clip these guys off of the sprue, and then you've got to glue them all together and shave off all the little mold lines, do all that jazz, and then you've got to texture the bases, and then you got to prime them, and then you got to paint them, and then you got to seal them, and all that jazz. Which is one of the reasons why X-Wing is super popular, I think, and growing, because... and I've said this a bunch of times before, I've got, in my local store that I hang out at, there are guys who've been playing Magic, nothing but Magic, for years, who've gotten into X-Wing because they can open them up out of that package and start playing, because they're pre-painted and they're pre-built and everything, and so that was a really smart idea on Fantasy Flight's part. And that's why that game is very, 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 very popular. I own some X-Wing. I enjoy it. I just haven't played as much lately as I know. Actually, today there's a tournament at my local store for X-Wing, which I'm not going to because I don't generally play tournaments. But yeah, X-Wing is a big deal, and I think that's going to help to maybe bring more people into wargaming, but I don't know. You know what I mean? So, Twisted Bishop says, I know what you mean about the metal Infinity models. I was assembling a box of the alien bugmen, and it was a battle of attrition. Hardest assembly I've ever done. Yeah, they're hard. They're definitely... for the advanced modelers, that we like to say. For Infinity models, CA glue and baking soda is the way to go. See, that's another use for baking soda and CA glue, because as soon as the baking soda hits the CA glue, it's like a catalyst and starts to harden it, and it does help, yeah. Piscina says, thanks for doing the show. Well, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. My top tip would be to skip the lawn, says Alex. Well, I would, but eventually the city will send a guy over to mow the lawn for us and then charge us like a crazy amount of money, so you don't want to do that. You do need to mow the lawn. And it's going to rain next week a good deal, so I got to do it before it rains, because otherwise you don't want to mow the lawn in the rain. Do people pin plastic? Sometimes, sometimes people do pin plastic. It depends on the way it's set up. Some people will also pin plastic if they're converting. Like if an arm is supposed to go on a certain way, but they want to convert it to go a different way, then they'll pin it because it doesn't fit together the way that it was sort of modeled, and then they'll green stuff around the pin. I've done that actually before. Not too many times, but that's one reason sometimes to pin plastic. But normally, no, you don't need to, because it's lighter, the glue's attached to it more easily, that kind of stuff. What time zone? You're in the UK. I'm in America. I'm in the Central Time Zone. It is currently 10:55 in the morning here where I am. So that's that's where I'm at right now. That's the time zone. Central Time Zone is what it's called. Let's see here. Sometimes I pin plastic in basing. Oh yeah, no, I've done that. If you want to get special, like the other Skaven that are going to go here are going to be pinned, and it's just so that I know where they're going to go. You can see that hole already drilled there, and then I think there's a hole, maybe there's not a hole up here, but there's definitely a pin hole down there. So that, for basing, I will pin from time to time into the foot. Like all my fishmen are like that, but that's because I painted them all separately on corks, and I'm going to be putting them onto resin bases. If you're attaching a plastic model to a resin base, I almost always try to put a pin in the foot, just because it helps to hold on to the base a little bit more. Resin bases can be heavier than these little, hollow plastic bases. So picking up a thin model, and lifting a slightly heavier base over time makes me a bit concerned. And like I said, I like to over reinforce. If that, I don't think that's a word. I pinned some of my skeleton chests to the hips since the glue bond was very weak. Yeah, they can be. I mean, they are pretty narrow little dudes. If you're looking, right down in there, that's a pretty narrow finger. Nope, higher there. That's a pretty narrow little bond, but they're so light that because of the plastic, it's not that big of a deal, I don't think. How is scenery placed in the Age of Sigmar? Is it placed before the game only, or can it be placed chosen like the fortifications in 40k? Just looking at the Tree People Woods rules look interesting. I believe the way we've always played it, you're placing it at the beginning. There is some piece of scenery that can basically be summoned by wizards. It's like a floating, I forget what it's called. It's like a floating chaos star, and there's like a tornado of fire, and then there's a base. And my friend will use that sometimes, but that's not exactly a piece of scenery per se. It's just basically a thing that you summon, and then the wizard rides on top of it, and then gets a bunch of benefits and stuff like that. I think miniature gaming is more like PC gaming in that the hobby side of assembling your gaming rig is as much a part of it as it is the games themselves. To some degree, I think that's true. That's also part of the reason why I don't generally do much PC gaming and I mostly do console gaming. Also, I love to sit on the couch and play on a much larger screen. So I know I get flack for it sometimes from friends who are like, oh, you should get into PC gaming. And I'm like, I did that for years and years and years and years. I mean, I was basically a PC gamer from dial-up times until about the mid to late 2000s. And then I started getting, maybe actually just late 2000s. And then I just really started getting more into like Xbox, and then I recently switched with the most recent consoles. I switched over to PlayStation 4 because I just liked it better for whatever reason in comparison. And but honestly, I haven't really been playing much in the way of video games lately, just because I got a lot of these guys to paint. You know what I mean? Like every 3 hours that I sit playing a video game takes away from 3 hours I could be spending listening to podcasts and audiobooks and painting skeletons or building skeletons or whatever. And at the end of the time, the same 3 hours, I've got a bunch of skeletons, or I've got just a flatter ass from sitting on the couch. It's just the way that I've been looking at it lately. Now, all that being said, there's a game coming out in a month called No Man's Sky that I'm super interested in. I've talked about it a little bit before here. My fear is that it's going to make my painting output slow down a little bit because it does look really cool. So, yeah. Let's see here. We're just about done because I've got to get going soon. Yeah, I've heard about the Steam box. You plug it into your TV and all that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. You can hook your PC to your TV. We'll see about that. I don't know. Eric Sheely says, thanks for the Krylon camo tip. I tested on a few models, including Reaper Bones. The Bones minis still feel sticky. What can I do with these? See, I've not had that issue. I painted some Reaper Bones models for my This Is Not a Task warband. If you go look at the top of my Facebook page, or if you look at the top of my YouTube channel or whatever, there's a group of like post-apocalyptic guys like right in the middle, and it says something about new wargaming videos every Friday. There's a guy with like a great kind of cool long coat in there, and he's a alchemist from the Reaper Bones line, and I painted him up. He was primed, I'm pretty sure, with the Krylon, and I haven't had a problem. He was never sticky at all, so I don't know why that would be. I've not heard other people talk about that, so I don't know. Yeah. Let's see here. Mixing army can be bad for fluff reasons. Yeah, sometimes, it's personal preference. Around my area, we mostly all play, you have to stick in the same Grand Alliance. So, all your guys are death, all your guys are chaos, all your guys are order, all your guys are destruction. That being said, sometimes someone shows up with a weird just conglomeration of stuff that they want to learn to play. Well, sure, we'll let them do it, but, yeah. No Man's Sky looks so cool. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. It'll be interesting to see if it actually lives up to the hype. I kind of hope it. I hope it does, but it'll be interesting to see. Even my wife is very interested in that. She likes to play generally more strategy games like Civilization and stuff like that, but she's interested in No Man's Sky as well. So, David Rosillo, have you tried GW's Agrellan Earth technical paint? Yes, I have. I have done some work with it. I have found it works best if you prime. So The technical paints like that, I've used the red one, which is like the more Mars kind of colored one. I used it on a model like I like to paint over it. So like on a base like this, if it's got something to stick to, if you paint it directly onto the plastic, wait for it to do all of its crackling, and then prime over it, you're going to lose flakes of it because it's very, very delicate. If you put down a layer of glue like this and put some powder in there, or if you just brush on some other kind of paint or primer onto the base before you paint the agrellan, or whatever the heck it's called, agrellan earth, or whatever the red stuff is, and let that crackle, it'll stick a lot better. That's just a tip that I learned recently. So I have not used it on this base. I may use it. I don't know if I'll use it on this base at all. I have used it on my Mutalith Vortex Beast, who is about half done painted. And it turned out pretty cool. But yeah, I definitely paint over it. I do not use it as a final color. If I was playing Mechanicus or whatever, I guess I probably would. So yeah. Anyway, it's a little after 11. I appreciate everybody who has come out to chat and and see some skeletons. You'll be seeing more progress on them probably next week. They'll at least be primed, and hopefully I'll have some wash and stuff on them as well, and some others starting to do some details. This is going to be a really busy week for me. I'm going to be working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'm going to Madison, Wisconsin for a distributor conference. I'm going with my friend that owns the game store. The ACD Games Day Distributor Conference. We're going to be down there Wednesday night, Thursday, and Friday morning, I guess. Coming back probably Friday afternoon. So if you follow on like Facebook and Twitter and whatever, Instagram, I'll probably have pictures from that conference. It's basically lots of different manufacturers will be there showing off their stuff to basically game store owners. That's kind of the whole point of the thing. I'll be sitting in a couple of different panels and listening and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see how the GW panel goes this year, because GW as a company seems to be a lot different than they were last year. So it'll be interesting to see if they tell us more information or if they just kind of give us the runaround like they did the last couple of years. So I'll let you guys know about that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much where we're at, and I think that I think it was a good show. I appreciate you guys coming to watch, and thanks for watching. And now I'm going to try to turn it off.